Court is done for the day in California. Let's talk about a little bit what happened today. Joining me now is DOJ Senior Attorney and former federal prosecutor Tammy Allison and former federal prosecutor and criminal attorney Florina Altschiller. Thank you, ladies. That was interesting to sit through. I don't think, Florina, I've ever seen a bigger notebook full of exhibits. What about you?
Chanley, to sit through is exactly the right phrase right there. It is painful, it is slow, and it is a lot. They certainly don't know how to get in and get out and get the point across. We are listening to the background of the background to the background. This certainly is a sordid witness with a lot of drama in terms of sleeping with a witness, in terms of taking tickets to a show from the sister of the dead wife. And we haven't even gotten to any of that yet. We're listening to just boring minutia.
You know, and his testimony is going to last tomorrow. Tammy, what are your thoughts as far as all these videos? I know we mentioned it earlier, but these conditional testimonies that are happening on video, the jury sitting through all of it. Although Detective Strucky's a little bit entertaining. If you sit there and watch him, he has some personality coming through, which makes it a little interesting as he pours through that huge notebook. What were your thoughts?
I mean, barely entertaining with his personality. Florina hit the nail on the head. It's boring. And even for us experienced attorneys, it's very difficult to sit through and pay attention to the recording, read the closed captioning of what's being said and follow along. That notebook is huge. There's so much to take in. There's so much to digest. So even for us experienced attorneys, imagine how the jury is taking all of that in and how they're feeling. Are they even paying attention to it? Are they going to be able to retain this information for however long that this trial lasts?
Exactly. All right. Thank you both for hanging out with me tonight and watching the trial with me together. We're going to switch gears to another story. A former Army helicopter pilot is accused of triple murder. It's the next big murder trial here on Court TV, and we will bring it to you live. Today, that pilot was in court for hearings on the eve of jury selection in his case, and we'll take you live to that courthouse after a quick break. This is Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Chanley Painter, and we are covering a triple murder case involving all sorts of twists and turns, including shootings, arson, and bigamy. Yes, you heard me right. We expect jury selection in that case to get underway tomorrow. It is the case of Kentucky versus Christian Martin. Christian Kit Martin is a 53-year-old former Army Ranger and commercial airline pilot who is facing charges in the deaths of 3 of his neighbors. Martin became a person of interest for investigators when they learned one of the alleged victims was about to testify about Martin in a court-martial case. And here are the 3 people Martin is accused of murdering. Starting on the left is Edward Danzero. His charred body, along with the body of Pamela Phillips, were found on November 19th of 2015 in a burned car. That car was traced to the home of Pamela's husband, Calvin Phillips. And that's where police found the body of Calvin Phillips, who had also been shot to death. All that happened just 2 weeks before Calvin Phillips was going to testify at a court-martial against Christian Martin. Now, those court-martial charges were based on accusations from Martin's estranged wife, who is accused of mishandling classified military information and sexually abusing her and her children. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Stick with me. We'll have a chart, I'm sure, soon of these facts. But Christian Martin is accusing his estranged wife, Joan Harmon, of cheating on him with one of the victims in this case, Calvin Phillips. And Christian Martin says that his estranged wife made up those accusations against him, the sexual abuse accusations, when he found out that she was still married to her first husband. And that's where the bigamy comes in. Like I said, it's complicated, but we're going to uncomplicate it in the Daily Debrief with my favorite legal correspondent, Julia Janae, who is live in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Julia, first of all, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I want to know exactly the charges that Christian Martin is facing in this case.
Good evening, Chanley. Good to be with you. He is facing 10 different counts on 5 different types of charges or crimes. First, those 3 counts of murder. And I do want to point out that in the murder charges and all of these charges against him, he's charged with complicity, that he may not have been the actual person to carry it out, but that he in the least facilitated it. There's also those 2 counts of burglary for breaking into the homes of Calvin Phillips and his wife Pamela Phillips to carry out those crimes, and arson related to the burning of that car where Ed Denzero and Pamela Phillips were found in a field. Also an attempted arson of Calvin Phillips' body in the home where he was, because he was found actually on top of firewood, and authorities said that the fire was started by the perpetrator and it self-extinguished itself. Also, there are 3 counts of tampering with evidence for all of those items I just mentioned. The fact that he tried to get rid of the bodies, allegedly using fire or however else that the state is going to try and prove, not necessarily that he was the only one who could have carried it out, because actually their own lead investigator in this case told the grand jury that they can't prove that he for sure was the one who did it. But under Kentucky law for complicity, they just have to show that he facilitated, that he either solicited or aided someone else in carrying out these 3 murders.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how are these 3 separate killings and 2 separate crime scenes really complicating this case?
It really does complicate it, and it leaves us with some unknowns that we're hearing from investigators, but the state still believes that their case is very strong against Christian Kit Martin. So as far as crime scenes, we talked about some of them already. That field where the car was found, that's what first alerted police to these crimes. This happened at 10:30 in the morning on November 19th, 2015, the day after the crimes are allegedly happened. That's when authorities believe that Christian Martin killed his victims, was on November 18th. But they were alerted that there was a car on fire in this field in Pembroke, Kentucky. And once authorities investigated that, they found those 2 bodies inside, checked the registration on that car, and it led them to the home of Pam and Calvin Phillips. Inside that home on Main Street, just about 5 minutes away from that field, is where they found the body of Calvin Phillips in the basement. And how they got into that home on Main Street is because they noticed outside there was a handgun and a pool of blood at the rear, and they were able to obtain a search warrant to go inside. So they have at least those 2 crime scenes, but the unknowns that I mentioned are the fact that they don't know for sure where all of these murders were committed. They know that Christian Martin was found inside his home in the basement, but whether or not he was actually killed there is unclear. It's also unclear where Pam Phillips and Ed Denzero were actually shot, because they actually had bullets inside of their bodies, but were also in this car that was burning. The investigating officer who testified for the grand jury said that even cause of death, it's hard for them to know for sure whether those victims died from the gunshot wounds or from the fire.
Wow, this is going to be an intriguing case. I know there was a huge pretrial hearing earlier today, the judge taking up some big matters. What was decided?
Several motions in front of the judge today. This is the final pretrial hearing before jury selection starts. One thing that the judge ruled on is he's not going to make it any easier for Christian Martin to get out of jail. He's currently being held on a $3 million bail. No credit will be given to him for bond, so he would actually have to come up with $3 million cash. So he has still been in jail, and the judge denied a bond reduction. He also allowed for the victim's family, who are also going to be witnesses in this case, to sit through the trial, something that we don't typically see. Often they are sequestered so that they don't hear the testimony of other people, but the judge is going to allow them to sit through the trial, even though they are testifying in both the guilt phase and, if convicted, a penalty phase in this case. And he also heard arguments and is going to rule tomorrow on whether or not there are certain statements made by the victims in this case who are deceased. Will that be able to come in front of the jury? Something that the assistant attorney generals who are prosecuting this case, they put in front of the court today, things that Pamela and Calvin Phillips told their loved ones and people that they were close to in the days leading up to their deaths. Take a listen.
Calvin Phillips, again, statement to Captain James Garrett. The prosecutor at the court martial, of the court martial. After a hearing, Calvin Phillips told him he was concerned that contention was building in the neighborhood, that the defendant, Martin, was walking his dog around his property. He was concerned about what Martin might do. The declarant, Pamela Phillips, stated to a coworker that she and her husband were not traveling to Michigan for Thanksgiving because of fear that Christian Martin might be in their home waiting for them when they return home. She specifically said to the coworker, if something happens to me, tell the authorities to look at Christian Martin. Again, the Commonwealth is prepared to establish in an evidentiary hearing by preponderance of the evidence that the defendant, in fact, committed wrongdoing, brought about the deaths of Calvin and Pamela Phillips. That is why they are not available.
The defense is arguing that those statements are hearsay and should not be admitted. The judge says he's going to weigh the information and make a ruling on it tomorrow.
And Julia, what can we expect from court tomorrow?
Tomorrow we can expect the beginning of jury selection, that there's going to be a pool of 100 jurors that are coming here to the Hardin County Justice Center. They will go through that general voir dire, and the ones who pass that, being asked those COVID-19 questions and other screening questions, they will move to the second phase, which we expect to begin the day after that.
Thank you so much, Julia. We will keep in touch with you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Coming up, everyone, it's almost time for our Talk Back segment. Today, Court TV viewers answered the question, if you think Robert Durst killed his wife, Kathleen, what is your theory about what happened to her? That's next after this short break. 30 years ago, a person dressed as a clown, holding flowers and balloons, rang the doorbell at Marlene Warren's home. But when Marlene answered, the clown shot her to death.
It was one of the worst days of my life.
Advanced DNA testing led authorities to Sheila Keene Warren. The defendant ended up marrying the victim's husband.
She wanted to marry him. She had to get rid of his wife.
This is going to be a riveting case, pairing a classic lover's triangle with modern forensics.
It's like a Lifetime movie plot.
We're talking about 30 years ago. You know, memories fade, evidence fade.
They can take the lack of evidence and create reasonable doubt.
I have seen convictions in cases, even though there's no murder weapon or no body.
From my knowledge of the case, she's innocent.
I mean, this is an unreal case.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Chanley Painter. It is time for our Talk Back segment, where each day we post a question on Court TV's social media pages, and we gather your comments and questions and respond on the show. So today's question is, if you think Robert Durst killed his wife Kathleen, what is your theory about what happened to her? So still with me, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Florina Altschiller, and former DOJ senior attorney and federal prosecutor Tammy Allison. Let's look at the first viewer comment. Walter on YouTube says he probably disposed of her body in a similar way to that man he killed, although acquitted, in Texas. Florina. He's talking, of course, about Morris Black. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is somebody who had access to real estate projects. And I think if you dismember a body, dump them in cement in a lot where there's going to be a building erected, good luck ever discovering that body. And Robert Durst is somebody who had access to a whole host of real estate projects going on all over the tri-state area. So to find a cement field or to find an area where there's going to be a building erected is really not something beyond his means. And clearly he's demonstrated that he knows how to at least attempt to dismember that body.
Exactly. And Tammy, of course, that's how California prosecutors were able to get in Kathleen's disappearance because of common scheme or plan, right? They're alleging here that, yeah, what he did to Morris Black is what he did to Kathleen Durst.
Yes, absolutely, Florina. That hypothetical and that scenario about his access to the cement and the real estate, oh my gosh, I believe that you might be right on that. And since he does plan on testifying in his own defense, which, as we know, that's kind of rare, who knows? He may admit to all of that on the stand, exactly as you stated, Florina. But I do believe that because the defense brought out the fact that the dismemberment of Mr. Black in Galveston, Texas was so bad, and he left so many, trails behind to show that he was connected to that, that it may not be a strong argument as far as saying that he was able to dispose of his wife in the similar way, because there's no evidence. Like, no one has seen anything about where she is, where she could be. There's absolutely no trace or trail, as we've seen with Mr. Black's case. And that's what the defense was harping on, saying that there's no way that he could be responsible for these because he was so sloppy in the murder of Mr. Black that he probably would have been sloppy in the murders of his a late wife.
Exactly. Okay, ladies, here is a comment from Michelle Smith. She says, I believe they were both intoxicated somewhat. They fought. He struck her too hard. She died, and he panicked. I don't believe his first murder was premeditated. It just happened and was no way self-defense either. Okay, Florina, what are your thoughts on Michelle's comment?
Well, certainly there's enough testimony about her drinking sometimes to excess and her using cocaine. There's also quite a bit of testimony about a prior history of domestic violence, sometimes it escalating, sometimes it being, according to one doctor, not so bad, whatever that means. Either way, there's clearly a history of him having a heated temper with her and arguments escalating. It is very possible that there was an accusation or some sort of argument and he overreacted. The thing to remember, though, is this is something that happened in the 80s. This is not the frail man you see before you today. And this is also not the same man who attempted to, dispose of a body in Texas 20 years later. This is somebody who was much more able-bodied back then. And so it does make sense that he could have been far more physical back in the 80s.
Good point. Okay, here we go, Tammy. One more comment from Teresa Sturgis says he killed her and had his friend Susan Berman help him get rid of the body. And she called the medical school saying she, Kathy, was out sick. Isn't that the prosecution's case?
That sounds like exactly what the prosecution is attempting to prove here. So who knows, that commenter might be correct in her assessment of what could have happened back in the 80s and what the prosecution is trying to prove here. So who knows? I think that whenever he takes the stand, I believe that, any defendant that takes the stand, typically that's not a good look. So most likely we'll see.
Thank you so much, Tammy Allison and Florina Altschiller for being with me. I'm Chanley Painter. It's been a pleasure being with you this evening. Up next, closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Don't miss it. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.